Take number 2 of my review of Weathercraft by Jim Woodring, a graphic novel, a Frank comic by American cartoonist Jim Woodring, 2010. It's a continuation of his Frank comics, which he's been doing since I think the 1990s. He works in very kind of a dream space. Woodring does dream journals, and at one point he actually drew himself, but then he kind of abandoned that as he was just sick of drawing himself and started drawing a anthropological cat, Frank, who indeed shows up in this book, though this book focuses much more on Man-Hog, a half-man, half-hog, naked creature, filthy, degraded, that walks around on all fours and has torments and adventures in this book, and perhaps a great spiritual transformation and epiphany that, it's poor Man-Hog. Here, let me show you just some to give you a sense of the style. The book is completely wordless. There is no words. This is all. I think someone said pantomime of there's poor old Man-Hog being confronted by this huge and fearsome creature. This black and white, highly stylized. Someone said it was using kind of it's a combination of kind of the Fleischer comic style of kind of wacky cat, kind of that kind of anthropological cats and stuff like that, but with kind of the independent kind of 60s drug R-crumb kind of big wheel stuff. There's Woodring doing a bit of a tribute to R-crumb there, that kind of Bigfoot style, I think is what it's called. Yes, so these are all wordless comics through this kind of a dreamscape. I appreciate that there are no words. There's actually a lot of writing that gets put on these things, and I actually avoid the writing because I just want to see. I want to kind of follow the story, the wordless pantomime story of Frank gets up one day, kind of bakes his cake, takes his his pets, creatures, companions out, little creatures that are almost like little cats or little dogs, but they're like kind of box shapes and stuff like that, out for a picnic, and Man-Hog, this filthy half man, half pig creature, wakes up in the wilderness and sees Frank and tries to steal something out of his bag, but gets whacked and gets driven off into the wilderness, where he then kind of has more, slowly gets degraded more and more and more. While at the same time, these creatures here, these winged creatures, I think they're called Betty and Veronica on the back, but I just think of them as the winged creatures. I don't want to know what other people call them. To me, they're these winged beaked creatures with knees that go back the wrong way. They come out with their own, not picnic, but kind of own ceremony, where they've taken this frog and they lance it, and it shoots out this gaseous form, and it seems to kind of envelop this already weird, bizarre landscape into yet another bizarre dream that perhaps Man-Hog has. I wanted to highlight this comic because it's a part of Fantagraphic Books, which is a big publisher big in quotations, probably doesn't do anything like Marvel or DC Comics, but has a tendency to patronize the eccentrics, independent artists, and let them sort of do their own thing. This is the opposite of kind of the corporate. We're gonna tell a long soap opera story about men and women in tights and sell these things to the movies for millions of dollars and set up our own movie studios. Like, no, this is individual artists, creators coming up with their own very personal vision, very personal in Woodring's thing, since it does seem to come from his own psyche, his own personal symbology, as well as apparently Hinduism and stuff like that, of coming up with this bizarre dream logic world where as a reader, who you're reading the images, you're not reading the words, that you have to kind of try and come up with your own story, your own kind of a meaning. Like there's that magic thing in movies sometimes where the characters shut up and they just do an action. Better Call Saul. If you haven't watched that, there's some magnificent scenes in there where you just watch a character wordlessly go throughout his world. There's no one else there, and he's doing something. And you as a viewer are kind of drawn in, trying to figure out what the heck is he doing? What's he doing now? Why is he doing that? What's going on? And there's a part of that happens in this, but to the nth degree, because we're in this bizarre symbolist world where we're trying to figure out what the hell's happened to Manhog. What does that mean? Why did he got swallowed by a giant fish? And then Frank got swallowed by a giant fish, and then Manhog pulls open a tear in the universe and goes through and has adventure, but then he escapes, and then he escapes again, and he ends up into the fish, and he gets Frank out of the belly of the fish. And what does this all mean? And it's like it's engaging on that level. It can also be kind of like a dream and kind of just poof out of your brain again afterwards. It's an experience. It's a trip, man. It's a trip. But it's a kind of an invigorating thing after sort of you kind of have such a steady diet of realist of stuff where, you know, everything makes sense. All the art, everybody is drawn to scale and perfect dimensions, and you know, you can see all the shadows on their face, and nothing is expressive, and you're not using, it's like you're tying you're tying your arms behind your back artistically, and you're not allowing this wonderful medium where you can draw anything to being like, no, it has to, you know, we have to make it physically possible or something like that. Whereas you know, I guess you could, you know, with CGI, you could come up with something like that, but it would lose Jim Woodring, Woodring's personal kind of, you know, touches of just like, look at that, look at the creature and it coming and looking around. It's just like it's hideous and it's gorgeous at the same time, and it's not in color. And it's not, so this is, I guess it's a little bit of an enthusiasm piece. You know, it's funny. It's one of these things that like, I won't remember this because it's a dream, and you won't remember my video because it's a dream. Well, no, unfortunately, you'll probably remember my video because it's not a dream. It's a dude talking to the camera. But yeah, so I encourage you to pick it up and try it out, just as something to kind of poke your brain with, to let yourself know that there's a little bit more out there. If you're not familiar with this stuff, if you are familiar with this stuff, you know, share below what you think of it, whether it's just kind of hippie bullshit or if it's wanking of some author. I really appreciate that this is Jim Woodring. Good or ill, this is Jim Woodring, and it's not Marvel Comics, it's not Fantagraphic Comics, a great publisher that patronizes, that publishes, makes a point of publishing all these individual creators. There's other publishers out there who do the same thing, but it's sort of it's the individual artistic artwork, art of comic making, of telling stories visually. And, you know, doing it to the extreme of not having actual words as the core. This is just the image. This is the image. Make sense of it. I don't know if I did. More videos later.